Those are the metropolitan counties. We must connect Githurai through Kiambu via Tatu City into a place you call Limuru. Then connect a line from, you reroute a satellite to Rongai, and then pull a line from Syokimau down to Ruai, which is on the Kangundo Road side. That commuter rail ring, I can pronounce to you, is bigger than the standard gauge railway economically. On a factorial, on a multiple of 10. 10 million of us live around that. That's the dream of Azimio. It will be the biggest thing, because around those towns, Kikuyu, Ndenderu, Thika, Ruiru, Machakos, Mulolongo, Athi River, Ngong, Kiserian, as I speak around those towns, we will create massive park and ride stations. You cannot have country buses bringing people and decanting them on Tomboya Street and River Road as we do today. And hawkers, as usual, which are fantastic people, they follow the traffic. So with park and ride stations there and big fruit, veg markets across there, we create jobs. Then we start regenerating CBD to become an arts, culture, conferencing, events, regenerating CBD, which is the biggest piece of real estate that we want to do. First floor, second floor, remarking CBD. So we will remark CBD and make sure that the whole of Westlands area coming down, the CBD will constitute of the Westlands constituency, a bit of Mathare constituency, a bit of Makadara constituency, and a bit of Starehe constituency. That will constitute CBD. And it will be a pick and drop zone. If your car has no designated parking, our dream is that you don't bring your personal car, you walk, you cycle, and then we gentrify the city. We start to see growth on the southern side of the northern side of Tom Mboya, on that side. On the northern side of Tom Mboya to Nairobi River, going to the Ngara area. The railway city, what I'm talking about is not a dream. The railway city has been mooted. It will be at the center of this design. The railway city has big bus stops for all the 8 transport corridors of the city. So mobility and transport, we have figured it out. I could spend the whole morning describing it to you, but vote for us, because we'll bring it to a reality. We're the ones who are going to close the mobility and transport piece. Pedestrianization, the railway, bus transportation, and pick and drop zones. Then there's an issue which is very important, which is public service delivery and e-government. That's the crux of the matter. And that has been captured by cartels. Nairobi collects over 200 million shillings a day. Only 30 to 40 million shillings gets into its coffers. Please don't take my word for it. Just say don't say I'm alarmist. Read the report of Auditor General Gathungu on Nairobi City County Executive. It's a public document. Just Google it, download it, and read it. And also read the Auditor General report. I think the latest one is 2020, if I'm not wrong. If not, they've not done the 2021. If you read that document, you know what it says? Number one, Nairobi is not a going concern. Nairobi has had an adverse audit opinion for as long as it has existed. Nairobi has a debt of 85 billion shillings and a huge pending bills, apparently for people who have collected garbage, and we are stuck in the shortage of water and a stink of sewer and the garbage as we see it. Nairobi has no fixed asset register. Nairobi has bank accounts you can't tell. I think it has 45 bank accounts. All of them are, I don't know in which banks. Nobody knows what bank accounts. I'm walking into trouble if you're fearful. And the staff get their salaries 2 months later. Right now they have not been paid. And when they get their salaries, the deduction, statutory deduction, taxes and everything else, they get deducted, but those taxes are never remitted to the KRA. All suppliers to Nairobi City County don't pay VAT. They are not taxable. Nairobi is a mess. It is a 40-year-old mess. I'm 49. I was 9 years old when the mess started. This is a 40-year problem. Please don't trivialize it and give it to somebody just because they are wearing the right color or they look good. Give it to somebody who is competent. This job requires competence, not confidence. And I submit to you, when I look at our competition, they suffer from the Peters principle. they have risen to their level of incompetence. Don't trust them with this city. You give it to them because you're the guys with the power. We are in trouble, all of us. This place is scuttling down the hill. Nairobi has been held back because Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Amolo Odinga shook hands on the foot of Harambee House, which created a lot of, how many of you know? It is actually Uhuru who went to Raila and told Raila, let's shake hands. Yeah, because the other guy who's his competitor, or who was his deputy, wanted to shake hands with Raila so that they can attack Kikuyus. This would have been Kenyan war. And Uhuru and Raila said no. I don't know how many of you know that story. I know it. I'm telling you for free. The handshake. The handshake is the foundation of political stability in this country. And that handshake has now given birth to Azimio la Umoja, which is the resolution of unity, which has then brought 5 parties together. But that's what I'll conclude with. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the European Business Council, what am I saying? Judge me on whether I've succeeded in creating a vibrant economy through ease of doing business, and under there is building permits. Judge me based on mobility and transport and how traffic congestion and all this and pedestrianization of the city. Judge me based on decent jobs created in Nairobi, and that's what we've promised. And judge me on whether I am running an effective, efficient public service with decentralized services down to the ward level, with customer service, e-government, digitalized customer service center. Let me close there by saying, in private sector, because you understand this language, you have a shareholder, you have employees, and you have customers. In politics, you also have shareholders, you have you have employees, and you have voters. The shareholder in politics is the political party. And the biggest indiscipline in this country is the indiscipline of political parties. You go to Europe, you go to America, you have the Republicans and you have the Democrats. You go to the UK, I think you've got Labour and Conservatives. Over here, the most disciplined party leader, the most disciplined leader of the shareholding enterprise in politics is Raila Amolo Odinga. He says left, it's left. He says right, is right. He's the most disciplined. His competitor in this election is a transactional politician. He pays money through, let me not mention the institution. He just pays you because he understands one thing. True, politics in Kenya is about what have you done for me lately. The job in Nairobi is not about what you have done for me lately. The job in Nairobi is about an executive with political and commercial acumen who understands and can the patterns, the alphabet, and the orchestration of performance. That's the person we actually require in the city county of Nairobi. So that's really what we want. That's the agenda around the economy, a vibrant economy. The last thing is environment. The last thing is environment. I talked about C, society, environment, economy, and environment. We really want a proper environment. And the environment is water. We are consuming 1 million liters. We only produce 500,000 cubes. So rationing continues. There's a whale-leaf problem between Ruiru Dam and Nairobi. If that is solved before December, the French government has put in a lot of dollars around the water and the sanitation issue. Just fixing that brings another 100,000 cubes, and that solves a lot of the problem in lower Nairobi, upper Langata side. We can be able to give water. There's a lot of non-revenue water, leakage of water. So not only are we short of water ab initio, there's also shortage of water because we are losing water through very different means. And what we want is clean water. But at the same time, let's harvest. Let's create incentives to harvest water from all these rooftops that we have, because it's not as if we are short of rainfall. The storm drains, you see, when it rains a little bit in Nairobi, so clean water and sanitation is a goal I commit to under the theme of environment. Solid waste management is a theme I commit to under the theme of environment. A resilient, disaster-ready, disaster-prepared city, fire engines, proper storm drains is a thing I commit to. If you go to the Eastlands of Nairobi, every storm drain is actually a flowing raw sewer full of plastic bottles. And they are open. I've never seen a place where you build roads and you dig a hole this way and a hole this way. The number of legs broken in Eastlands as people walk or run and fall into this, and kids, is unbelievable. And those cases are available everywhere. We've got to cover the storm drains. Just really do basic cover ostensibly, and also incentivize neighborhoods that we can for people to do in situ where is as is sanitation cleaning. You know, like they do in other cities. If you go to Tokyo, you are required to clean your own, but that is more sophisticated stuff. Let's start with the basics. Let's just cover. And let's connect the sewer system in Nairobi. 5 out of 10 Nairobians have a flushing toilet. The rest of us are on long drops. Yeah, that's the city we are in. That's why Nairobi River, it's the only city where you build buildings facing outside the river, not facing the river, is Nairobi. And we are the only place where in the world, in a city, we talk about riparian areas. You know, there are very many cities with rivers running through them. Now in Nairobi, here is talking about there's a riparian. We have upcountry thinking in the urban area. You know, this is an urban zone. The other thing is, under environment, that perhaps is worthwhile is climate change. Nairobi has a massive asset in the national park. We've got Aberdare rainforest because that's what Sigiroi or the Sigiroi forest and Karura is, and Ngong forest. These are the lungs of Nairobi. Protect them, promote them. The Arboretum, you know, we are doing works with the national park. We need to build parks and green spaces for people as we, and also proper land use and urban planning and zoning. That's the last one. That's another goal under the environment. And while we are doing it, do so with an objective of containing pollution, air, noise, and water, especially air and noise. And if we do the proper zoning and we redirect, we think in 5 years, you'll start to see that pubs move back to CBD, they leave the neighborhoods through economic and social incentives, and neighborhood associations, then there'll be a distinct where we live, where we play, where we work. That distinction will start to come through because there's a whole mix-up around where we live, where we work, and where we play because of proper lack of land use. Nairobi has fantastic urban planners. I went to university, and one of the best departments of the University of Nairobi was the Department of Architecture and Design and Urban Planning. We used to call it ADD. I wonder where those professionals went. They are now working in Cape Town. You're finding them, they're designing London. It's Kenyans. In fact, I found a Kenyan who's the biggest designer of water in California, you know, in the Bay Area, in San Francisco. I say, what are you doing here? Come home and let's do stuff. So why are we looking for that job? I think I spend a lot of time explaining our plans. Our plans is to make you see. And Tuesday, 10th of August is Epiphany Tuesday for the Republic of Kenya. For those of you who don't understand local politics, let me talk raw local politics. Politics in Kenya is done with mother tongue, all right? But like everywhere else in the world, it's about what have you done for me lately. No issue with that. It continues to be. But in this country, we have 5 large political parties. ODM, Jubilee, Wiper, KANU, NAK Kenya, and the other one we are competing with. Those 5 parties have come and they are saying, enough, we are tired. We have suffered enough fools and foolishness. It's time to unite, we move forward. And that is why it's Azimio la Umoja. By the way, the word Azimio la Umoja was first used in 1962. It was mooted by the great Tom Mboya, the great Jomo Kenyatta, the great Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, our founding fathers. It is the language that took us to Lancaster House Conference. Arap Moi was on the other side with Kadu and Ronald Ngala. We were divided by tribes, by the colonial government now. We are coming back and saying, by the way, why don't we borrow the same inspiration and come together as people? But there's one community of Kenyans in Mount Kenya who are going to be the swing vote on 12th of August. I come from that community. This election is a census on whether that community truly believes in a non-corrupt Kenya or a corrupt Kenya. Actually, it's a census between corrupt Kikuyus and non-corrupt Kikuyus. This is what this election is. Because that's where the swing vote sits. Let's stop wasting time. Every single corrupt, charlatan, shortcutter, breaker of the law, tax evader is on the yellow side if they come from the mountain. That's what they believe in. Their philosophy is pot belly stomach. They believe in nothing else apart from themselves. And we are going to take a census. And I submit to you, the penny will drop so loudly because you only know as somebody from the Kikuyu has voted for you after the vote is counted. The yellow side will be shocked because there are very many decent, hardworking people who've come from a solid, normal, working class background like I have done and worked myself over the years I have worked, who are going to vote right on the ballot on the day. I'm telling you so that you stop thinking that this contest is so complicated. Everybody else has decided the way they are going to vote. The vote has been called. And that's why the number of trips to the mountain region by both parties is unprecedented. It's like a gadfly on a mound of manure. Everybody's zeroing in there. And that is what this contest is about. I also dare say it's a census between how many Kenyans truly believe no corruption versus corruption. And I also dare say the only person who can shut front corruption and go forward is Raila Amolo Odinga and also Uhuru Kenyatta, what he has done. The biggest people who have financed the so-called rebellion, which is perceived as a rebellion, is the people who are corrupt. And I know that because the hardest years I've had as a private sector CEO were the last 10 years. Out of all the 18 years I was a chief executive officer. If we don't deal with this corruption thing, then we have a problem. I'm closing now so that I can sit down and take your question. Nairobi and this country is like a stomach. There's good bacteria and bad bacteria in our stomach. But the bad bacteria has become salient. It has become dominant. It's the one that is loading over our stomach and our pot belly as a country. So we are on permanent diarrhea. We've got to change that. And that is what this election is not about Azimio and our competitors. This election is about corruption versus, it's a curse. Those people who will vote there, and the corrupt people are injecting resentment into the population. They are telling them, look at those guys, they sit in Move and Pick, they are the rich ones. We are bringing them down, so we take you up. They are rich, you are poor because they are rich. And we are saying, wait a minute, we are an ecosystem. We are an ecosystem. There will always be employers and employees. I've been an employee all my life. I have never seen my employer as my enemy. Today I'm standing here asking to be your employee in the Nairobi City County. You're not my enemy, you're my partner. And I'm saying this is how qualified I am. And I close by saying it's perhaps the most peaceful, most issue-based canvassed election since independence. So it's also a good thing. We have all become really mature. If you look at the noise, if you look at your order books, I've never seen a more sort of what you call relatively stable, peaceful election season. But perhaps it's because there's no Kikuyu running for president. But it is the most important election of our time. You will either, for those of you who have a vote, be on the ballot, you'll be casting a curse or casting a blessing. And that's how we are telling the people. Go and cast a blessing. Vote for unity. Vote for competence. Vote for hope. Vote for inspiration. Vote for people who will deliver essential services. But because I'm talking about the Nairobi City, if you forget everything I've said, just know me as a governor who's coming back to deliver basics, essential services to you. And your benefit will be, if you're an investor, your property will rise in value. If you're somebody who lives here, you'll have a wonderful lifestyle and you'll enjoy your time in Nairobi. My promise to you is in 5 years, Nairobi will truly be a global hub in Africa for technology, for investment, for financial services, for arts, for culture, for business. This is going to be a global hub of the fruits of commerce and industry. That's what we want to convert it to be, because that's the Nairobi I've lived, that's the Nairobi I believe in, and that is my home. Thank you very much for listening to me. I really apologize for speaking for far too long. Happy to take your questions. Please go and find us the vote and let them know it's a curse versus a blessing that's on the ballot. Corruption versus no corruption. God bless you all. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, Polycarp. That was very interesting to listen to some of your really good points, and I like the social aspect to quite a lot of them. You know, about society in particular. And you're very right. There are a lot of us in this room that wouldn't know where Kahawa, Githarai, all of these parts of Eastlands, Eastleigh, because we're used to staying in Lavington, Killimani, Killaleshwa. But just on one of the questions I just wanted to ask, and it sort of relates to the social side and relates to the feeding and the education and those who went to bed last night and didn't eat, and the quality of life. And I go back to the same point. For those of us that live in Westlands and Killimani and Spring Valley and the more affluent areas of Nairobi, I don't know how many of us have visited Dandora or walked through Dandora. I have. There's an Irish doctor who runs a hospital in Dandora. I think it's level 3, Dr. Joe Vaughan. And when you drive through it to get to his hospital, the smell, the kids, the families living on rubbish dumps, it's horrible and it's heartbreaking. They have just as much right as we have to a proper way of life, access to services. They cannot be expected to live in rubbish dumps. What will you do to try and alleviate that issue with illegal dumping in that just one particular area, because we all know about it, but I'm sure there are others. What are your plans to deal with rubbish in particular?
Thank you very much. Rubbish in Nairobi is collected based on a formula. If you are a rubbish collector or a garbage collector, you're paid. It's privatized, by the way, but you're paid based on the weight of the rubbish you collect and the distance you travel from the rubbish dump. So in normal English, you've been incentivized to collect farthest from the rubbish dump and carry the heaviest. So you wait for it to pile highest. You even put stones on it so that you can transport it. So the closer you are to the rubbish dump, the dirtier Nairobi is, because there's no distance to travel. So that's why Dandora is that dirty. So what are we doing? The solution to that is to bring population density into the equation, and also to reduce the weighting of distance as a metric for paying for rubbish. And secondly, taking back the responsibility. I grew up in a city where this is our job. Why are we, the job of government, there's certain jobs government must do. You can't privatize security as much as you have watchmen. You still need the police force. And we must continue to collect the garbage. And we are putting together a leasing program where there'll be garbage collection receptacles. If you notice this city, you rarely see dustbins. You've got to look for dustbins. Dustbins are as rare as public toilets. We are going to put dustbins, big receptacles, beautiful trucks that come to collect, and we will work with communities and residential areas and neighborhood associations to make sure that we collect. So population density will be the biggest premium for rubbish collection, because garbage is generated by the population, is not generated by buildings. So you should have population density in the equation. By the way, the population density of Nairobi is 8,000 people per square kilometer. The population density of Kenya is 38 people per square kilometer. The challenge of Nairobi is a population density challenge. But policy looks at Nairobi not with the population, with other things. We have to bring population into the equation of everything we do, not just garbage alone, including healthcare, schools, and everything that we want to say. So I totally agree with you. Those people live a dog's life in reality. As governor, I want them to live a human life.
Thank you, and I think we're all pretty much in agreement. You alluded earlier on to Nairobi Metropolitan Services, and I think it's fair to say that since Lieutenant General Batty, I think he is now, after his promotion, has really done a good job with the hospitals and a lot of the infrastructure projects in various areas of Nairobi, and it's my understanding that when the new governor comes in, then his tenure will end, because there will be a governor in place. What will you plan to do if elected, to continue the work that has been done by him and his team at Nairobi Metropolitan Services? And are there any specific areas of what he's done that you want to grow and expand and further promote?
First of all, I celebrate Uhuru Kenyatta, our president, who's our commander-in-chief of Kenya's armed forces, for deploying the military into civilian service. Because when he noticed government is almost collapsing, the juggernaut called government is collapsing because of corruption. And Nairobi Metropolitan Service is one of them. You know, when you become president of Kenya, you become head of state and head of government. People don't know the difference between state and government. Government is very corrupt. State remains intact. This country is held together by the state. And the military is the state. And I really celebrate the president in using that arm to really put a band-aid and a beautiful bandage to Nairobi. And thank God for General Badi, who's also been a friend of mine. I knew him as an ace pilot. He used to buy fuel from me for the F-15s, which used to fly. He's a solid guy. And I think he took the commands from his general very well. And what he has done, pedestrianizing a little bit of inner CBD, we've seen a change. And I don't want to go into the details. But Nairobi Metropolitan Services, that was not the intent of the people of Kenya in the Constitution. Intent of the people of Kenya in the Constitution was not for government to be run by the state, but by government to be run by, that is why I call it government of the people, by the people, for the people. So the creature called NMS extinguishes by law, I think in November or October of this year. So when I become governor on the 10th, my assumption of office notes will come from Her Excellency Governor Kananu and General Badi. I shall take 2 sets of assumption of office tools, and that is perhaps one of the best laws created, because it makes sure we draw a line in the sand on the past, and I take over going to the future, so that it's very clear. You take the books of accounts, they hand over the HR practices, they hand over the financial practices, they hand over the projects, they hand over the pending bills, and then that becomes my business. Assumption of office period, I think, takes 30 days, I think, but we will be taking over from NMS, and that is what it is. NMS is not an enemy of anyone, it's only an enemy of the guys we are competing with, because they have not had access into the coffers of Nairobi City County. NMS also used a budget from the national government that is extra to the county revenue allocation, because Nairobi requires more, and I pronounce you that Nairobi requires more. And please judge me, if I'm not collecting 100 million shillings a day in revenue, then Polycarp Igathe is an absolute failure as government, as a governor of Nairobi. If I collect 100 million a day, all these programs I've told you, I'll finance from own source revenue. Actually, Commission for Revenue Allocation, which is a constitutional commission, did a study and said with 6 revenue lines, Nairobi can collect 80 billion shillings. Own revenue. Then 80 billion shillings plus the 30 or 24 billion I get from national government, with 100 billion shillings, what can I do? I will invest in education, I'll invest in healthcare, I'll invest in community health workers, I will build the things I've said, I'll make the walkways that we require, but I'm going to form a cabinet that reflects the talent of this country and the talent of this city, Nairobi. I will not bring jokers to my cabinet. The politicians must give me space to do politics, but also to form a cabinet that is competent. I will not form a cabinet of confident people who know how to cheer political rallies. Nairobi, there is some work to be done. I'm pronouncing myself very strongly on that. If there's a place I will play my politics strongly, is in forming cabinet, is in appointing chief officers, is in appointing directors. Because as a CEO, I know you're only as good as your management team. And if I come and bring the same jokers who have always been directors, chief officers, and cabinet, I'm going to fail. I have to make sure the County Public Service Board gives me the right talent. And talent that is patriotic, talent that believes in building. That's how we're going to do this. So I think that is the biggest gap. And I go back to your quote. Yes, it is who needs to get this job done. Because you can't have a responsibility where a county that has 30% of Kenya's GDP, I'm rounding it off, it was 27.5, 30% of Kenya's GDP, as important as Nairobi, then you give a job of the chief financial officer, yeah, to a fellow whose the biggest responsibilities ever held, yeah, is running a hardware shop in Isili, yeah? How? You know, or give the most important job like environmental, the job of the environmental job, you then give it to somebody who's then related to the leader of the majority in parliament, because it's good politics to do that. We have to stop messing around with Nairobi, because Nairobi is Kenya. Nairobi communicates. Nairobi consumes everything in Kenya. We are going to stop this country if we continue that way. When we pile important national responsibility onto people who are not eligible. And sorry for answering this question too long. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Chapter 6 of Kenya's Constitution. No, it's not a statute. It's a constitutional mandate. You must be suitable. You must be competent. You must have the right level of integrity. That chapter has only been observed in breach by individuals and by institutions. But when it's observed in breach, we have an election. Chapter 1, the most powerful people are the people of Kenya. I'm asking them, let us communicate to these institutions who are abusing the Constitution that you're the most powerful people by the way we vote on 9th of August. If we vote the right way, then that's the way to go. If we allow cities like Mombasa, Kisumu, Nairobi, Eldoret, Thika, Nakuru, if we allow these spaces to be run by charlatans, we have only ourselves to blame.
Thank you. And no need to apologize. I mean, we're all here to listen, so take as long as you need. I just want to bring in Nick Daniels from Food for Education, who was very interested in some of the policy that's come out from Azimio and obviously your comments today. So if we have a microphone for Nick.
Yes, thank you very much. And it's really exciting to hear about food security, healthcare, education in your manifesto. And I think school feeding is really a silver bullet for fixing many of the problems that we see in those sectors. Personally, I am concerned that you're talking specifically about informal settlements under Linda Jamie, and I believe that there are pockets of poverty across even many affluent suburbs in Nairobi, places like Lavington Westlands. So just two parts to the question. What resources are you committing to school feeding in Nairobi? And what plans do you have to scale up school feeding so that no child in the city needs to learn while hungry? Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. You're right. You're absolutely right. In every upmarket neighborhood, there's an informal settlement. So you go to Karen, it has its Kuinda. Runda, it has Githogoro. Loresho has its Kibagare. I'm talking about all informal settlements and low-income areas in the Nairobi. I'm pronouncing myself on that. The resources I'll commit, that's a specific question about a number. I'm happy to answer that question before end of day on 11th of August, right, when I'm in office. But my pledge is that there will be real resourcing in my manifesto to deliver on that pledge. And I've spoken to the level of revenue leakage in Nairobi. I'm going to fix the financing model for Nairobi by being very creative around revenue collection without adding rates, actually by reducing them, by expanding. Let me give you a statistic that you will know how much money we are leaving on the table. Nairobi, the whole of Eastlands, nobody has title deeds. They sit on allotment letters. So 70% of the buildings you see in Eastlands, all the embakassis, they don't have building permits. They were just built. I'm not even sure the maps of those buildings exist in the city hall or digitally. So what am I saying? They don't pay rates. So by issuing title deeds, by regularizing those buildings, by paying rates, we'll be able to generate the resources that we require. Nairobi has 3.2 million discrete properties that should pay rates, that have a PO box and that should pay rates. only 120,000 properties pay rates in the city of Nairobi. So I'm hoping there I'm giving you the numbers to show you. So what will we do? We will reduce the rates, but get grow the base of ratepayers, but reduce the rates. You get my point. Reduce the rate, but grow the base, expand the base. We will not do what KRA does, just collecting taxes from those who are paying today. The base of ratepayers, will increase. But rates are equivalent to the services you offer. Why should I pay rates and there's garbage, there's sewer? You're not doing this for me. So also by delivering services, we'll be able to collect services. You know, Governor Kidero used to collect, I think it was billion shillings, or I think he hit 15 billion. I don't have the number, but give it to him. He collected 15 billion shillings. Now Nairobi County is only collecting 8 billion, which means they're collecting roughly, you know, whatever, 40 million a day. That's really where they are. It has gone even further down. While KRA is collecting even higher. And today, the revenue collector in Nairobi is KRA. So we are going to fix the entire revenue management system. It's not the collection system, but the revenue management, from parking, from rates, from billboards, outdoor billboards and advertising, from the city has a lot of revenue sources, from the hospitals, but make sure that we contain the level of leakage so that revenue then is put in responsible hands to create solutions for people in informal settlements and where we are. So the financing model is a big plank. If we don't get that right, I want to promise and make a pledge. The financing model and the city delivery organization will be in place in 100 days when I'm in office. That's the only promise I'm making in 100 days, that I will make a public service that is fit for purpose, ready for essential service delivery. So by the time I assume office and I get the assumption of office tools and instruments, I will then be ready to go. But with competent people who are pragmatic, practical, talented, and also patriots.
Thank you. So allow me to open it up now to any questions from the floor. Anything burning that you want to... Francis, to this gentleman here.
Okay, good morning, incoming governor.
Thank you, good morning.
We are very proud for you to be here. My name is Benson from Mark and More Solutions. I'm from BIK. My question is slightly different from the things you have articulated. Really, as you have said, that Nairobi is the face of Kenya, and by extension, Africa, probably. We are not immune to the effects of the global challenges that we are facing. And I'd like you just to tell us, what do you intend to do with the 4 key items which have been highlighted? One of them is the effects of COVID, because we are not immune from that, even as we plan these big things to do. There's the aspect of the climate change, which is really not in your docket as such. And thirdly, we have the war in Ukraine. As you know, it is a factor. Lastly, all these things are leading to what we call economic crisis, because politically speaking or economically speaking, there are some things which we also need to acknowledge that they are somehow beyond ourselves. So maybe if you can touch on those, because so that they don't affect the good plans that you have. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a real welcome question. Let me start. I'm going to focus, like I said, on community health workers. The city is very densely populated. It's 696 square kilometers. We're 6 million of us. We need a front army that drives preventive medicine, preventive health care, rather than curative. Deworming, all those things. And that's why I'm promising that once I have fixed the revenue challenge, the community health volunteer will become community health worker. I don't know whether you know, under NMS, one of the things I celebrate them for, although we see the pedestrianization and the cleaning of CBD, is the digging of 193 boreholes in the Nairobi metropolitan area. 145 of those boreholes were done in the informal settlements. That is what rescued Nairobi from COVID-19, because those people did not have water. You remember in the past, people used to campaign based on how many trucks they deliver of water to the informal settlements. If you go to the informal settlements now, two things were done: access roads and low-income areas, and the boreholes. Unfortunately, government somehow doesn't know very well how to promote itself. But me, I know, because I go to those places. But government did a sterling job. We would have all died here. You know the way Bill Gates' wife was saying? But she did not know that we had a beautiful, those boreholes, they are drilled and they have high water tanks. Those people are accessing clean water today. So COVID-19 is an issue of clean water. I've also talked about the way leaves that we are going to do, and also prevent the food system in Nairobi and the food handling in Nairobi. We are going to look at it. So, and also recycling of water, solar heating, basically regreening our energy space, and also providing a lot of, I want to bring the third utility to life in Nairobi. The third utility is data. Water and sewer has always been a city utility. Electricity has always been a city utility. Data is going to be a utility in Nairobi. I don't know whether you know that Kenya Pipeline Company has a dark fiber. It connects straight to Seacom and Teams in Mombasa. We are going to partner with the Kenya Pipeline Company to fire up and light up their dark fiber. Public spaces, hospitals, schools, offices. This will be a city where data comes to you at a level and a bandwidth you can't imagine. That's why in the city you should not get a leader with a narrow bandwidth. This city requires somebody with a wide bandwidth, a broadband bandwidth. We will give that data service, and that data service allows you to access and do what you can do, and only we know how to do that. I was sales and marketing manager of Africa Online. I was the first guy to sell high-speed data in this city in the early 2000s. I understand that game. And at the same time, on global, you've raised an issue about Ukraine. After the Ukraine crisis, it has brought to the fore. It has created a crisis in foreign exchange, inflation, because wheat, edible oil, maize, steel has come to. There's a challenge with that. You know, we should actually, even COVID-19, making vaccines became, and even building masks became an issue. I'm a real believer that it is time for leaders like myself in office to insist that we should consume what we produce. In fact, I'm not going to use that cliche called buy Kenya, buy Kenya. It bores me. We should consume what we produce. That has been the biggest problem of the African and the biggest problem of the Kenyan. In fact, if you're not largely rural Kenya, when it comes to food, for instance, consumes what it produces because everybody has a kitchen garden. That's why they are very healthy, they are not stunted. But if you look at Nairobi, we consume what we don't produce. Why? If you look, we have two large rivers flowing through Nairobi into Galana and Sabaki, or Athi River and Tana. They go through the most productive land in soil to the sea. And actually they flood. Only crocodiles and hippos enjoy those rivers as they flow to the sea. If we grew sugar, rice, maize, wheat, what stops us from doing those four things to the extent that we can actually self-fulfill ourselves? It's a failure of the Ministry of Agriculture. It's a failure of me as Igathe. It's a failure of you as where you are. Agriculture and land are two critical, mission-critical things going forward. And I'm pronouncing myself that I will support the global Minister of Agriculture in the government, the Minister of Lands, because Nairobi will become the consumer of what's produced around our country. Okay, we have had a debate about second-hand clothes, but let me weigh in there. Sure, I even wear second-hand clothes. But should we also allow underwear and bras and socks that is second-hand? Can we at least say that one, because of health reasons, let's produce it in Kenya so that we can have cotton factory, ginning, yarning, apparel making, the value chain of cotton can come back. So Nairobi, most of the clothes in Kenya is worn in Nairobi, just like most of the votes are in Nairobi. So that Nairobi can then lift up Nyando or Nyanza area. Even people, beer. Barley, we take a lot of beer in Nairobi. Barley is grown in Laikipia, Rift Valley, wherever. That's where it comes from. So the solution to Ukraine-Russia war is for you to become self-sufficient. The world is only driven by its own. How do you become self-sufficient? You cannot be self-sufficient in everything, so that we are left only with fuel, maybe, or with things that we cannot buy. But we cannot have a country where, because two people have decided to have a fight, or they have a war, we catch a cold. You know, I know it's a globalized world, but if you look at the rest of the world, look at America. They created their own shale gas, shale oil. Let's learn from others. You mean we can't produce our own vaccines in Kenya? We can, because we have KEMRI. We have the medical research laboratories. But it's because we underestimate ourselves, we trivialize ourselves, and also we bring charlatans and jokers and people who are not eligible to public office. For far too long, we've given very important national responsibility to fellows who are poets, insulters, court jesters, yeah? You know, basically cartoons are who we have given the job of running government for far too long. By the way, then you leave a president up there who is only working with cartoons right across. It can't. And the person who has the responsibility of fixing that is you, the voter. It's you, the power. It's me, the voter. I'm the one with the power. It is the first time we have good, decent people running for public office. Look at what Raila is doing. He's decent, he's good. Look at his running mate, Martha Karua, champion of water, champion of justice in this country. Are you telling me evil people have come together to win, and they're more cooperative and they're more organized than us? What's happening to the good people? What has happened to us? We sit and complain in cocktails. All I'm asking Kenyans is wake up very early in the morning. You, the silent majority, don't even attend a public rally if that's not your cup of tea, but vote Azimio la Umoja. Now, on climate change, on other global, we are not immune to global issues. COVID-19 was an airport disease. It came through the airports. Yeah, it's really an airport disease. People travel, you're going to get COVID. And this is not the end. The question is, to what extent is Nairobi resilient to COVID-19? My friend, we should celebrate our city. We have done better than Shanghai. We have done better than London. We have done better than New York. In fact, we don't celebrate ourselves enough. This country is solid. And that's why I'm telling you, those people called community health workers, we've survived COVID better than those guys. They thought we'll be decimated. They were the ones who were decimated than we are. And sorry, I mean, you're celebrating the decimation, but it's them who pronounce themselves loud and clear. We are actually a very resilient people, but also our maternal health care, our immunization rate. We believe in breastfeeding. That was the biggest. You know, our women continue to believe that you should breastfeed. Doesn't matter what happens to your breasts. But breastfeeding is the biggest shield to public health. Why am I talking so much about community health volunteers and workers? Those are the people who go to every household in Kenya, and Nairobi especially, and tell the mother, continue breastfeeding for 6 months. Take this kid for polio, tuberculosis, the following. They do that. They actually also do palliative care for people with cancer, for people with end-of-life terminal illnesses. They take care of them. Those people, we need to take care of them. We also need to take care of the staff of Nairobi City County. You know, pay them the right salary, give them the right bonuses, make sure their welfare is taken care of. You can't expect services from somebody who's demotivated. Those are some of the things that we'll do. And let me deal with the things I can change. I can change. We will use the law. We will use our political influence to make sure, to a very large extent, we support consuming what we produce. And by the way, I want to trigger consumption in Nairobi. If I trigger consumption in Nairobi, and maybe you are not there when I started, I talked about consumer credit, household credit, credit to the women groups, credit to young people. If we trigger consumption, investment is really easy. But this economy for a long time has been driven by government spending on large infrastructural projects. That's why people are looking, you see even us, we are laughing at the expressway rather than celebrate it, because the woman who sells in Gikomba doesn't see the difference. one of the things, Nairobi has 70 markets only for 6 million people. We need to build another 150 markets because roadsides have become markets. When you're going to Kangemi, living in Nairobi, I'm sure you see people selling things on the road. We need to build 150 very good markets that will then absorb. That's why I'm talking about credit. I'm going to sit with commercial banks because I'm a commercial banker, and now I've come into politics to say, guys, credit must go to who gives you deposits. And I will speak to Central Bank, I'll speak to the Minister of Finance and say, how can we incentivize that? How can we incentivize loans to go back to who gives us deposits? Not penalize, but incentivize. Because banks, if you give commercial banks the opportunity to make lazy money, today they are getting deposits at 1% from the micro, small, medium enterprise. They are lending to government at 16%. Because I think the treasury bond is now at 13.5%. Because you don't pay taxes on the coupon rate, you make 16%. Even me, I would do that business. Just take from you, give it to you as government, and sit. But there is a structural fault in that economic design. And some of us who bring bandwidth to the equation must change that equation so that he or she who gives low-priced deposits also get low-priced loan. And with a low-priced loan, then they are able to trigger demand. Demand creates jobs because supply comes automatically. It's a shame that the demand we are talking about now is about other things, but that really is what is required. And to close, and sorry, maybe I'm speaking too much, but just into the detail. And local purchase order by Nairobi City County under my watch will be a local purchase order. It will be backed by cash. You will take it to a bank and you can discount it and there'll be cash. Today, Nairobi City County is running accrual accounting. And maybe that's the way government is going. I don't believe. Government was always cash accounting. You can't come to me and I tell you, supply uniforms for the Nairobi Inspectorate, and then I take 2 years to pay you. How? I can only give you an LPO that is backed by a proper budget. And that budget is also backed by a proper economic plan. And that economic plan is backed by proper public participation. So the budget starts with a county integrated development plan. And planning must be separate from budgeting. And budgeting must be separate from execution of the budgeting. The cash cycle, the order to cash cycle, if I can use that, for Nairobi City County will be neat. I want to make it neat in 100 days. And the procure to pay cycle. I can't have pending bills no more. First of all, I'll pay the genuine pending bills because I'll fix the revenue very quickly so I can pay the genuine pending bills. But businessmen cannot go to hospital with cancerous cells because it's been caused by Nairobi City County anymore, going forward. That's what we do. Because business people, in fact, people bump behind your car because the guy is stressed, the lady is stressed. I supplied the county, my house is being sold, my business is being sold by the bank because this county has not paid me. And those are the things we need to arrest. And that requires management. That requires depth of being able to do business, but also patriotism and the ability to look and to see. The ability to look and to see. For me, this responsibility I'm asking for is a calling. This is not a job. I wake up to a calling. I've always woken up to a calling. I'm not coming for a job. I've had all the jobs I can enjoy and earn out there competitively, by the way. But this is also competitive. I'm asking that you give me this responsibility and you join me in getting it done.
Thank you. Okay, so with the interest of time, are you okay for time?
Yes.
Yes, you're okay for time. Okay, let me go to who've got. Oh, sorry, Dr. Harry.
Thank you. I'm Paris Ngahu. A medical doctor who's also a skin specialist and a public health specialist. I have 2 comments and a question. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you on your eloquent presentation. It was really good. And I truly believe in your vision. I'm excited about the fact that you'd like to make community health volunteers to workers, because that will go in a long way in achieving the universal healthcare coverage. And there's also the fact that you'd like to focus on public health, which is a very good thing. So my question is actually on universal healthcare coverage that was initiated by the government of Kenya in 2018. They did pilots in 4 counties, and it wasn't successful. Even up to now, most individuals and most families cannot afford the NHIF payment, the monthly 500 shillings. So my question is, what would be your plan to strengthen universal healthcare, and what extra measures are you also going to take to fulfill your agenda of ease of healthcare for everyone?
Thank you very much, Daktari. And indeed, public health will remain a priority. I'll not repeat what I said. But the Hospital Health Insurance Fund of Kenya is the most amazing thing that has happened from this government the last 10 years. I mean, just the effectiveness of NHIF has been wonderful. But we have something we need to improve. When I look at NHIF today, their biggest disbursements is going to private hospitals. There's something there that is a problem, and I can see corruption loud and clear. When I speak to bishops from different faith organizations, the Catholic faith, the PCA faith, who run hospitals, they are complaining their invoices are not being paid by NHIF. Public hospitals are also complaining that they are behind the curve in terms of being paid by NHIF. What is this that is incentivizing? You know, I'm an economist. We learned about Adam Smith. The dinner, you don't owe your dinner to the benevolence of the baker, the butcher, and the brewer. It is their self-interest. What interest is prevailing supreme in NHIF so that the people they are reimbursing fastest and quickest is private hospitals, not public hospitals or hospitals run by religious and faith institutions? We are going to deal with that NHIF straight and square. It's starting to get eaten up by corruption, and NHIF, we shall enable you by being a county that recruits as many people as possible. In fact, we have a vision and a goal and a pledge that if you have a single business permit in Nairobi, one of the things I said, we will use the single business permit as an incentive tool for minimum wage. It will also be an incentive tool for NHIF recruitment, including for house girls, house helps, or what we call domestic house managers. Give them NHIF, because if all of us contribute, then we have a tool. What I've spoken to is a barrier, so access to hospital insurance is key in the city of Nairobi. And it doesn't matter whether you're in formal employment or informal employment. We as a government will look for incentives. We have the mechanisms to be able to build that. But we will also want to ask the global NHIF, which is under the national government, to really look at it. Our hospitals, that cash that is going to private, and by the way, what I have said is factual. Download the latest payments, the last 90 days by NHIF to whichever institutions, and you will see what I mean. And I think NHIF also needs to work with county governments. I'm going to be very active in recruiting Kenyans who live in Nairobi to the Hospital Insurance Fund. I think it's a wonderful thing. Of course, it has normal challenges of running an institutions, but they're not insurmountable challenges. And private hospitals must go to the back line. This is public. At the end of the day, healthcare, education, security, water, data, electricity, these things are public goods. Nothing has changed from Economics 101. There's public goods and there's private goods. They are goods that are best delivered by a government. And health is one of them. And also the doctor, not just the doctor, the nurse, the radiologist, the lab technician. We have this idea that hospitals is buildings. The same way a hotel is not a building. If this hotel did not have very good food, drink, waiters, clean cups, then it's not a hotel. But our hospitals and our dispensaries must be available. Then 24 hours. You know, today our dispensaries are working, I think 6 hours or 8 hours. They really need to be opened under my leadership. Nairobi dispensaries and public health care centers will work 24 hours. I grew up in a city where all my immunization I got from a Nairobi City County nurse. I went there, and if my mother didn't take me back, you know, I remember the Kasarani one, which was very popular and would take care of malaria. And we would line up and we would get our immunization, we would get our deworming tablets. The nurse knew the community around it because there's Nyumba Kumi structure, there's a ward development, and the public healthcare system was good. That's why we are resilient as we are, and thank God in terms of our health. So healthcare is both a software issue and a hardware issue, but we have paid too much attention to the hardware issue. We have forgotten the software issue, and the software issue is taking care of you as a doctor, making sure you have a good career, you as a healthcare worker, whether you're high, and not just, and even non-teaching staff in hospitals. I would like after 5 years to start to see more Nairobians go to public health system than the private health system. It seems we have undermined the public health system so that the private health system can go up, and it's too expensive, and the services in the private health system are also become very poor. You go in there, the triage is not done well. You know, they're also collapsing under their own weight. It's the same problem we did with public transport. We killed public transport for private transport. Today I've shown you government has gone back to the railway, and I've shown you big neighborhoods where people have moved. Public service is what really creates sustainable long-term value, and we will bring back decent public services to the people of Nairobi as far as education, health is concerned, security too. Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, just a point on that, I think it was raised a while back regarding NHIF. For those of us who can afford to pay, should pay more. Because I think a lot of us pay this around about the same 1,400, 1,600, and it should be equivalent to what we earn.
And I'll tell you, in the private sector, majority of us in this room don't even know whether NHIF exists. We go to Bupa, we go to private healthcare insurance. The hospital insurance fund, you should get it when you're getting your ID card, in my view. You should be recruited when you become of age, when you're 18. You should be recruited perhaps even when you go to university to go to the hospital insurance fund. But there's something wrong with that insurance fund in Kenya. It has been captured by corruption. When I see the 5 top hospitals whose invoices are attended to the fastest in Upper Hill at NHIF headquarters, it sends a very big signal that it's been captured. But this capture of institutions, this capture of counties, this capture of the government comes to an end on 9th of August. Because when I listen to Kenyans, the silent majority, because there is a big silent majority who are even not read in polls, they will surprise our competitors. Because for the first time ever, I've never seen a beautiful country like this. For the first time ever, I can tell you, anybody who does dodgy business is our competitor politically. I've never seen like this. It's beautiful. Anybody who believes in dodgy business, dodgy ways of working, cutting corners, who thinks the Constitution is a book to tear, he thinks the Constitution is a weekend magazine, who has no idea what the law will be, that person is in that yellow party, that fire party, that one. Yeah, they are on top of that wheelbarrow. But everybody who's decent, hardworking, believes in working, is on this side, is on Azimio Umoja. This is a contest between good and bad. It's as simple as that, value-wise. But they are not bad people, it's just that their habits, their values, their ideas are bad. They just believe brokerage, there. No value creation, but very rich. This side, value creation, and we go along. Thanks.
Okay, maybe, well, we got loads and loads of hands. Alec, and then I'll come to Titus.
Yes, thank you very much, Polycarp. Very interesting, and certainly I endorse your vision, and I support you. And there's a lot of very good things that you have proposed today. I have a couple of comments. First of all, I am the chairman of Gertrude's Children's Hospital, and we are a private hospital. And I think that you're a little bit unfair in your comments on the private hospital group, as it were, because between them, they are owed billions of shillings. Aga Khan, the major ones, Aga Khan, Mater, us, Nairobi Hospital, and it's because the services are provided. And it was a very good idea, and I think the problem with healthcare in this country is just the financing of it. And I think, as you were saying, that we should be paying more, because if you look at the developed world, the proportion of GDP that is put into healthcare, I mean, in the States, is about 10-15%, I believe, into healthcare. In this country, it's a very, very small proportion, and it's the whole financing issue that is very, very complex and has got to be dealt with. And there just isn't the resource base to provide the income for the level of demand that there is. But there's a lot of good work being done. But also, you know, Gertrude's works with the public hospitals as well. And as you say, they do not provide the services. That, you know, and a lot of it is due to the demotivation of the staff, and they're all doing their own thing. And as you say, it's a structural issue that needs to be addressed at the high level, because there's nothing I believe in more than UHC, and I think it's critical that we've got to widen the UHC, Universal Healthcare net, so that everybody is covered. And it's a challenge, you know. The private hospitals have their role, but we've got to expand the role of the public hospitals, because that's where the demand is being dealt with at the sort of the grassroots level. I think the other thing, two things. First of all, I just like to emphasize to everybody here how, you know, I was born in, my family came here in 1903, and probably I haven't got, you know, there's nobody in this room that's quite got my sort of background in this country. The change in the last 10 years, well, obviously, you know, in the Moi era, things really didn't change much, but the change this millennium have just been extraordinary. And I think it's put Nairobi into, because I also have businesses, my other business is Davis and Shirtliff, and I have branches in many countries in the region, and I visit all these capitals. Nairobi, by a mile, is the best city in the region. And you know, the expressway, as you were saying, the investment that's been done in this country, and in Nairobi particularly, has lifted Nairobi to a different level. And its potential is enormous. You know, it's geographically in the right place, it's got very intelligent and well-educated people. As you say, the education system is very good, and we've now got the resources. And I was just talking, I mean, I live in Muthaiga, it took me 10 minutes to get here today. And you know, just the way that the transport system has been developed, and some of the ideas, and the railway city, there's some such good ideas, and the city has got the potential to be a really world-class centre, you know, right up there with New York and Paris and so on, and London, in this part of the world. And I think that's your challenge, is to try and to create that. But I think the other thing is, the key issue is revenue generation for you guys. And you're talking about 80 billion, but you know, there's certain, and fiscal discipline is critical. And if you can create fiscal discipline, and as you say, pay bills and have people supporting you, then I think that you will do extremely well. And that really is the heart of the problem, is getting fiscal discipline, not just into Nairobi City Council, but into the country. And one thing I would suggest, where, you know, you mentioned about bringing rates down, certainly land, the rateable potential for revenue generation is huge in this country. And, you know, I in Muthaiga have a very nice house. I'm paying about £500 a year rent rates, which is ridiculously low. And I think, you know, the whole of the rental, that you've got to assess the values of the properties in the county, and put the rates up, and then of course widen the network, and that will be your main revenue base. And you know, in the big cities of the world, that is the main revenue base for financing, is rates. And there are these other ways, parking and so on, but that's never going to create huge revenue streams. And I think that really, that if you could, the revision of the rateable properties in this town, in the city, will really create the income stream that you need to create, hopefully, fiscal discipline that will enable you to finance what needs to be done here. And you know, I feel that is an important area that you should be considering. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Alec. I'm so happy that has come from a Muthaiga resident. And thanks for the work you do for this country in the water sector. There is a valuation role, a brand new valuation role for Nairobi that's been done with the support of the World Bank. That will be launched. because all this infrastructure, people are paying rates based on 1982 values, basically. But you know, we're in a campaign season, you're looking for votes. That does not win you votes. What we really must look at is, yes, we shall implement the valuation role, but the rate, percentage of rate, as you expand the base, but you put it perfectly as, let me summarize this way. If there is anything this country requires, is fiscal discipline and civic discipline. Two things, fiscal discipline and civic discipline. Civic discipline starts with voting the right way. Civic discipline is the precursor to fiscal discipline. Civic discipline means nidhamu ya mwananchi, and it starts at the ballot. That's where civic discipline for me is a precursor to fiscal discipline. Because if civic indiscipline leads to leaders who have no idea about fiscal discipline and have no experience about fiscal discipline, then we end up with the situation we're in. I'm totally with you around rates becoming the biggest thing, and charitable institutions like Gertrude. I think Gertrude is a charity. Most of the hospitals that you talk to they happen to be charitable institutions that offer public services. They continue to suffer. They are part of the class I talked about, faith. Maybe I left the charitable institution. The Aga Khan is a charitable hospital organization. The Nairobi Hospital Association is also a form of charity. But this seems to be third-class citizens when it comes to paying of invoices by NHIF. My issue with NHIF still remains that the institutions that exist made by an individual seems to be having the upper hand of getting the invoices settled, rather than the ones that are more charitable, faith-based, and public. That remains. But that is why this contest, electoral contest of Nairobi, you've really touched the heart of it. The electoral contest of Nairobi is who is more fiscally disciplined. Is it me, Igathe, or is it my competitor? Is it this party we are calling Azimio la Umoja, or is it our competitor? Who can you trust? And I like the way Martha Karua puts it. Who can you trust to send your child? You know, we all have children. I have 3. But there's who can you trust the most to give 5,000 shillings to go to the supermarket and buy the weekly shopping for the family and be able to bring it back home? This is never before has character, competence, and capability ever been an issue in an election more than Tuesday, 9th August. I'm calling it Epiphany Tuesday. That is when the penny will drop. Whether Kenyans, we are disciplined or we are indisciplined. Because it is discipline on the ballot versus indiscipline.
Okay, I need to wind it up here, but I'm going to just literally one quick question if you haven't spoken, and I'm only going to pick 2. So Titus, and for gender balance, this lady here. So we could start with you, and then Titus, and then Polycarp can answer both together if that's okay. And I'm really sorry to everybody else. I'm sure he'll hang around, maybe, hopefully, but let's see.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Diana Sifuna. I'm the CEO of Jonathan Jackson Foundation, a non-governmental organization, youth serving within Nairobi County. We're also members of the British Chamber of Commerce, so I'm glad to be here. And a supporter of Azimio as well, personally, on my personal accord. A question on youth economic inclusivity plan within Nairobi County for Polycarp. Beyond the Azimio manifesto's ambitious promise to young people, which I've read, I've worked in the youth sector for now 5 years, including the promise of giving the young people 7-year tax holidays. What is your plan to ensure the youths are empowered to create businesses within Nairobi County? It is fancy to talk about the Kazi Mtaani project, and I don't disregard it at all. But I think many young people who are not in employment, education, or training, through no fault of their own, have been disadvantaged, and therefore they resort to having crime, they resort to doing petty crimes and many other things, and their punishment is much more than the corporate criminals that we see in the justice systems. What is your plan to come down to the community and work with us? And I'm also hoping that I'm extending an arm to you as a youth-serving organization in Nairobi to work with you when you get into power, so that these young people do not get into crimes, and when they do, they are corrected using humanitarian ways that helps them to integrate back into society without shame, without being discriminated when it comes to employment in public offices or any other private institution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Polycarp. My name is Titus Ngatia. I'm an emotional intelligence consultant and an entrepreneur. And I greatly appreciate your presentation. I also followed your presentation at KEPSA. Key question for me is, the first question is on the civic discipline you talked about. You know, that can only be an extension of the civic consciousness, the level of civic consciousness among our people. And as you know, for instance, some of the circumstances that drove you into your resignation the last time was an impossible boss. And yet you know that that impossible boss, apparently now going to Mombasa, stands a very high chance of being elected. Why? Because the political class of this country has always taken advantage of the low level of our civic consciousness among the people, and also high levels of poverty. So in that regard, therefore, considering that the politics at the electoral level is a game of persuasion, and in as much as you are easily able to persuade all of us in this room and many other business people, ultimately the ballot is being decided by people who, some of whom maybe Dismas Mokua describes sometimes that the average voter is emotional and irrational. That ultimately politics is tuning around those emotional chords, and a lot of charlatans get through to office through that path. So I'm really curious how you're also factoring that in your calculation around your vision. But finally, I'm very big on entrepreneurship and on startups. And you know very well that this first quarter of 2022, Kenya has raised about $482 million in terms of venture funding. And I've had a lot of candidates talking about Nairobi being the financial and economic hub of Kenya and the region. So my question to you, therefore, is what is your game plan around venture funding, access, credit products access for various startups coming up in Nairobi? And why can't we even further expand our vision to a point where we desire to produce unicorns coming out of Nairobi? I think the only company trading around NSE is New York now, is Jumia. And Jumia is not exactly very African. And so for me, the question is, considering the kind of innovation we have in Kenya and the kind of genius that we see here in terms of tech, why don't we map that as our path, or as our trajectory, our focus area on how we are going to grow our GDP, because we're in the fourth industrial revolution and we don't have to go through the linear path as it was in the previous revolution. So thank you so much for your time.
No, so I'll answer very quickly. Thank you very much. Young people not in education, not employed, and lacking education training opportunities is a big concern for us. The average age of this country is 19. The people below the age of 35 in Kenya actually are 70% of the population or close to that. So Kenya is youthful. They are not a needy, they reflect the society. We will come down to the communities. I thank you very much for your invitation. For me, I've pronounced myself clear. Within my influence, I want to make sure that 8,500 young people are employed within my time in Nairobi City County. Work with the Public Service Commission, put them through opportunities, and they become the future, fresh. Every company I've ever worked for, one of the things that worked for me the most is starting a graduate trainee program and an apprenticeship program. That's really what I'm also going to bring to rebuild and revitalize the civil service or the public service in Nairobi City County. That has not happened, but do it deliberately and work with the national government, school of government, work with the Public Service Commission. By the way, government has better HR practices than private sector. That I know for a fact. I don't even need to debate. I tell a lot of people who who underestimate Kenya's government capacity. It's just that that capacity never came to Nairobi City County because Nairobi City County was opposition politics for far too long. Yeah, we will bring that to bear so that we can then grow and develop young people. You've heard how much time I spent talking about education, technical vocational training institutions. The youth are at the center. In fact, I'm always debating in my mind whether we actually need a ministry of youth. What we need in Kenya is a ministry of geriatrics because they are less than the younger people. This is a pediatric nation. It really is a pediatric nation. So maternal health care, child health care, those are the things to really continue to look at. So judge me based on how many young people will be unemployed or lacking educational training opportunities through my service as a Nairobi County. And that is a real measure that people can measure. You know, how many young people do I start with? The number that I start with and the number that I end with. And let's monitor that number on an annual basis. I think that's a beautiful scorecard. Coming back to your question, to your comments and questions, I think the biggest civic duty of everybody, Kenya has 85, close to 90% literacy rate. You know, people are educated in Kenya. Everybody speaks English. We have a very high level of education. The fact that you have gone to school until Form 4, even Standard 8, means you have civic discipline. You know the national anthem. You know how to behave. You know how to keep time. You know the basics. Civic discipline is asked of us. It is what we sing in our national anthem when we say, Ndio wajibu wetu. Kenya istahili heshima. Kenya deserves respect. Every citizen is called upon to demonstrate that. And there's no bigger respect than going to vote. That is the first action of civic discipline. Many people say, I'm so frustrated with politicians, I will not vote. I say, even if you sleep that day and you don't go to vote, you have voted. You have let the wrong person come to power. It's actually not clever not to vote. Wake up and vote. And go and vote. And that is the first action of civic discipline. Civic discipline is also saying, I will not urinate in every corner and every building I come across and claim that there are no toilets. Yeah, I will not litter, as I will not. I will not attack. I will respect laws. I'll be a law-abiding citizen. I will. Even me as a governor, I'm not a god. I am bound by the laws, the regulations of this country, of this city county, and even. If you go to a hotel like this, there are certain rules and regulations. When we went to school, we were given school rules. So that is what I mean by civic discipline. And it's a precursor to fiscal discipline. The fact that we have continuously ended up with the wrong leaders in politics, because we don't have wrong leaders in private sector. We don't have wrong leaders in the religious sector. We don't have wrong leaders in the fourth estate or the media. How come in politics we get it wrong? It's because we trivialize politics. We actually think it's a theater of the absurd. It's time to take politics a bit more seriously. And like somebody once said, politics is too important to be left to politicians. It is time for us to actually vote the right way so that we can have people who are disciplined in charge of our fiscal affairs, in charge of our revenue, in charge of our security affairs, our health affairs, our educational affairs. If we do that, we will start the beginning of the change, to change. And I submit to you, that person is Polycarp Igathe. Thank you very much for listening to me this morning.
Thank you, Polycarp. I think that deserves another round of applause. And as we said to the previous candidate, we also, as the European Business Council, wish you well, whatever the outcome, and we wish you and your team the best of luck. So, Laura, can I just invite you up for some very quick, I'm sorry, I know you've been staring at me for the last 10 minutes.
No, just 1 minute. Thank you very much, Mr. Igathe, for sharing your manifesto, agenda, and vision, and also for sharing broader political views. So we discussed a lot of things this morning, and I think that just to sum up a few of the topics, we discussed society transformation, affordable education, affordable healthcare, food security, access to public service, access to credit, economic transformation, jobs creation, new opportunities, triggering consumption, mobility and transport, sustainable development and climate change, water, sanitation, waste management, bringing essential services to the many, for the people of Nairobi. We also discuss integrity and transparency, not only in doing business, but in general for Nairobi. We discuss security and crime. You mentioned workers, children, young people, women, volunteers. You also mentioned revenue collection, fiscal discipline, and just discipline, I guess. So you have a lot on your plate, but definitely it would be unfair to say that the vision is not here. We are all convinced in this room that Nairobi has a huge potential to become a best-in-class and world-class inspiring, vibrant metropolis. You encouraged us as the private sector to be part of the solution and to get involved. Be sure that we will. I can speak for the board of the European Business Council, and we will. Please give us the platform. We will be delighted to have a regular meeting with you and also with your administration, not only to complain, not only to bring issues to you, but as we discussed earlier, really to be part of the solution and really to try to propose new solution. So just to conclude, we wish you luck. I also personally wish you a lot of energy for the last 4 weeks in this race and battle. Thank you very much for accepting your invitation, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Vote in peace.